PokeClass is sponsored by CollectorsCash.com, and they now have Dark Explorers in stock at incredible prices. Are you looking for that last card to complete your deck, or looking to boost your collection in any set of the game? Then Collectors Cash is where you need to be. They stock all of your boxes, tins, and singles of Pokemon, and any other card game for that matter, at very competitive prices. So make sure you visit www.collectorscash.com after the show. So I've come to realise that a lot of the best Pokemon TCG attackers have actually started with the letter G. We have cards like Gardevoir, second place at Worlds, got Gengar, great tournament performances including winning Nationals in part of the Vargar deck, Garchomp, winner of Worlds, part of the winning deck of Worlds. Okay, Mewtwo. Well, I didn't say all of them, did I? But anyway, today is all about Garchomp and his return to the game. That's right, Garchomp is back. Hey there everybody, and welcome to episode 79 of PokeClass, and today we're going to be looking at a second deck to be created through our new set Dragons Exalted, which is set to hit our shelves on August the 15th. Hardly any cards have been shown to us in the English set just yet, but we have a very good idea what the new set is going to contain, and this deck is set to hit hard and fast and is considered a strong contender for best deck in format. Low cost attackers, they hit for massive damage, but another deck that contains stage 2s, so today we're going to be analysing Garchomp Altaria. Both Garchomp and Altaria are going to be new cards in Dragons Exalted, so let's take a look at the translations of those first, and we'll look at a skeleton list after to get us going on building this deck. First up is Garchomp, not a stranger to the competitive format, but this time it's back in stage 2 dragon type form and looking forward to getting competitive again. It's one of the new dragon types which are going to be introduced in Dragons Exalted and has 140 HP, weakness to dragon type and a single retreat cost. It also has 2 attacks which are as follows. The first one is Garchomp is mainly being hyped about and is called Sonic Cutter, costing just a single fighting energy. For that fighting energy you do 60 damage and then discard a special energy attached to the defending Pokemon. So this actually sounds very average for a stage 2 Pokemon, but when we get to what Altaria does you'll see just why it looks better than it looks. But before we do that, the second attack is called Dragon Blade, which costs an extra water energy on top of your fighting energy costs for Sonic Cutter, and it does 100 damage, with the side effect that you must discard 2 cards from the top of your deck. Now 2 energy for 100 is actually really good, especially when you factor in that all dragons are weak to dragon. That's 200 damage for 2 energy and a small price to pay of 2 cards from your deck to take a decent amount of prizes. So the attacks are looking good, but not amazing, so let's take a look at Altaria, the second piece of the puzzle that makes this deck hit hard and fast. Here's Altaria, the stage 1 dragon type with 70 HP. It's weak to dragon and has a single retreat cost, as Garchomp does, but this one carries an ability and an attack. The attack is nothing special at all and does 40 damage for a water, metal and a cutlass, so it's all about the ability with this one. Battle Song states as long as Altaria is in play, your dragon type Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to the defending Pokemon, and most importantly, this one stacks. By this, I mean that each Altaria you have in play means 20 more damage is inflicted to the defending Pokemon by your dragon type guys. So if we go back to Garchomp, with 1 Altaria in play, you're doing 80 damage for just a single fighting energy, and with 2 Altaria, you're doing a massive 100 damage for just a single energy. This is what is causing the deck to get so hyped, because the energy cost to damage ratio is incredible when this thing gets going, and it's won a few Battle Carnival events in Japan too. So those are the 2 main players in the deck, Garchomp being the main attacker, and multiple Altaria being the support to boost your Garchomp's attacks. So let's have a look at the skeleton for this deck, as I'm sure it's looking quite tempting for you already. So we start off with a 4-2-4 Garchomp line, and a really important part about this deck are the pre-evolutions of Garchomp, because it actually brings a huge amount of speed to the deck, and this is why. Let's just take a quick look at Gabai, as it has an ability which speeds this deck up an incredible amount. The ability, called Dragon Call, allows you to search your deck for 1 dragon type Pokemon and place it into your hand, and this can be used for each Gabite that you have in play. As you can imagine, this speeds the deck up quite considerably, as you can search out further Gibbles for next turn, Swablu and Altaria for higher damage as soon as it comes into play, and then you'll have no worry for being able to evolve into Garchomp next turn, because you can just search it out as long as it still stays alive. The ability is really what makes the deck so much better than it looks, as it keeps you as consistent more than anything else. So going back to the list, you can probably understand a bit more about how this deck functions. 3-3 Altaria is going to be standard as you want to get them out to keep your damage output high, but you probably won't need 4 of each as you can search them out with Gabite, and having more than 2 Altaria in the field aren't usually needed. We finish up the Pokemon list with 2 Emolga, also another Pokemon I'm going to need to translate for you, as it's set to become another one of the big players in searching at your Pokemon early on. This Emolga is a 70 HP lightning type with 2 attacks, one of which you'll definitely be using and as a free retreat to boot, so it won't become too much of a liability later on. The first attack is what Emolga is all about, and for a colourless energy you can use Call for Family, which simply allows you to search for 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Hopefully you can already see how powerful this attack is going to be on the first turn when you're holding a rare candy and a stage 2 in hand, as it pretty much guarantees you the turn 2 rare candy as long as your hand is left as it is. With stage 2s, the trouble is surviving the catcher KO when a basic has been put down when you haven't got access to a second, and with Dual Ball and Collector gone, that isn't going to happen too easily. However, with this card's attack you can get the turn 1 search, which is extremely strong. Expect to see this card around everywhere in the new season. Back to the list, and the 2 Emolga finish it up, as we've just mentioned. The search power of this card is really good in the new format and is going to be a great starter. Some players would even fill up to 3 or 4 in a list to make sure that's what they start with, but it is player preference to what you do with the extra space. On to trainers now, and your supporters start off with the becoming standard 4N and 4 Juniper. N is a crazy card as we all know, and in the early game it can get you that Pont kind of hand refresh, but in the late game it can really sting an opponent when they're looking for the win. 4 Juniper is debatable because of all these evolutions. A lot of crucial stuff could get discarded in the process, but I feel the format is going to be a little bit more wasteful in that way, so it might just have to be something we get used to. The next supporter on the list you probably expected to be Bianca, but the last decent supporter we have in this rotation is Cherin, allowing you to draw 3 cards. Because this deck doesn't make use of Ultra Ball at all, as it doesn't need anything in the discard pile like Eels or Darkrai, you aren't going to have small enough hands to make use of Bianca at all. The deck is designed to be fast, and Cherin can really be nice to try and draw into Pokemon Search or Rare Candy when you're just missing one part of the play. Cherin or Bianca will completely revolve around deck choice and design. With the items, we start off with 4 Level Ball. As mentioned just now, this deck doesn't need to put energy into the discard pile and has precious resources, so Ultra Ball isn't needed, and Level Ball can search out all you need anyway, namely Gabite. You can search out all Pokemon in your list apart from Garchomp, but your Gabite does that for you when it's out, so I'm sure you can see why Max Level Ball is used here. Speed is everything in this deck, and this just helps it along nicely. Up next is 4 Pokemon Catcher, and I'm sure I don't need to describe this card anymore. In this new format, every single deck is going to be running 4 Catcher. With no way to get them back whenever you like anymore unless you're playing specific deck, maximum chance to keep cheap prizes is absolutely necessary right now. The next card we have is 3 Rare Candy, and many players are actually opting to play 2 or even just 1 because of the power of Gabite has to search out all the Pokemon you need in a turn anyway. Obviously, the risk you run here is being a turn slower, and you're more open to Catcher ruining your setup, but if you evolve one Gible into Gabite and then use its ability, you can still Rare Candy into another Garchomp to still give it that speed element. Gabite is a very strong part of the deck, so some lists are designed to make the most of it, so just bear in mind that you could skimp on the Rare Candy for more room if you're really looking for it because of the power of Gabite. Next up is 3 Switch, just because you don't run a lot of energy here and you don't want to be wasting it in retreating, even if you only have single retreat costs. Obviously Sky Arrow doesn't work, so running Switch just stops your opponent from trying to mess up your energy attachments and gives you as much versatility as possible. The next item card is one you may not have seen for a long time, but it's Pokemon Communication. With the new format, there isn't that much search for Pokemon now that Collector and Dual Ball are gone, but we do have Level Ball and Ultra Ball as well as this card left. Ultra Ball, as mentioned earlier, really doesn't fit that well in this deck, so Pokemon Communication is the best replacement. Stage cues can clog up the hand when you're looking for other Pokemon. Say you have a Garchomp in your hand but need the Gabite to start searching out your dragons, then you can swap it into the deck with Communication rather than having to discard valuable resources with Ultra Ball. The last item on the list is Super Rod, a card that is definitely going to be needed in a deck that runs multiple evolution lines, and since you have to run a high count of Juniper, valuable Pokemon may have to be discarded to survive a bad hand. You can also survive multiple KOs and easily be able to search out your dragons again in the same turn through Gabite's ability. A pretty standard card which is definitely needed in here for recovery reasons. Onto the energy, and you have 6 fighting energy and 4 blend of the lightning, water, metal and fighting variety. This is actually a very low count of energy, but I'm sure you can understand this as both of Garchomp's attacks, who is your main attacker, cost very little to do massive damage. The reason for blend energy is so that you can use Garchomp's second attack if needed, as it is extremely powerful for the energy cost, especially when powered up by Altaria's ability. It also opens up a few tech attackers that you can include, and I'll get to those in just a second. So now you have a very good idea of how the deck works and how to build it, let's have a look at what you can include to fill in those spare spaces you have in the list. The first thing you really want to consider is boosting the consistency of this list even more, and there are a few ways to do this. You can do this by upping the count of Emolga, Super Rod and or Pokemon communication, so that you have the maximum chance of being able to start with Emolga, just in case you start with a different Pokemon and haven't got the switch in hand to get Emolga into the active position, and Emolga is pretty great in this deck. More communication should be pretty obvious, as you'll have more chances of searching out your main Pokemon, and a second Super Rod would make sure that you don't suffer too much after KOs and can recover quickly through the synergy of this card and Gabite's ability. As for certain tech cards, you really have 2 main options at the moment, but I'm sure more will come to light as the metagame develops in the new season. The first one is pretty straightforward and doesn't really cater for any specific matchup, but will help you out in all games, and that is Max Potion. Garchomp does have a very nice 140 HP, and only other dragons will be able to KO it in one attack, so having max potions will help you out when it comes to the Darkrai matchup and various other situations. This deck can cater for max potion fully as well, since you can only use a single energy to attack in most cases, meaning you can heal up completely and then start hitting out for massive damage again in the same turn, making it even harder for your opponent to keep up. The second potential tech is the regular Rayquaza, which will be given to us in the new set. We do get Rayquaza as an EX, but there is also a regular rare and secret rare version which could come in handy too, and fits quite nice in this deck. Here it is, and as you can see, it is a dragon type and has an attack that hits for just 1 energy. While the attack output is only 40 damage, this does get powered up by Altaria's ability, so if there are 2 Altarias in play, you'll be doing a very nice 80 damage for just a single energy. This card is specifically for the mirror and against Darkrai Hydreigon, as you can one-hit KO all their dragon type Pokemon with Rayquaza's first attack, when powered up with by Altaria. You do have to discard the top 2 cards of your deck when using this attack, but I'm sure it's worth the trade when you're getting rid of such a crucial Pokemon such as Hydreigon. So that's it for my Garchomp Altaria deck analysis, which is set to make quite an impact in the new season. The deck is fairly fast for a stage 2 based deck, and can deal huge damage when fully set up. Will it be able to step up to other big guns in the format? Well, we'll just have to wait and see, but I'm sure this will certainly be a deck to look out for when Battle Roads finally come around. Thank you for watching this week's episode of PokeClass, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like, comment and subscribe as usual by clicking the appropriate buttons to keep up to date with all the videos I upload in between PokeClass, and make sure you all have a great weekend.